At the edge of an international border, at the edge of the Pacific, at the edge of innovation, community, education, and discovery, you're listening to At the Edge of It All, a University of San Diego podcast where USD experts speak on topics and stories that impact you and the broader community.
Thank you so much for joining us. I'm Lisette Martinez.
And I'm Elena Gomez. And with us today, we have Rachel Lozano Castro. She is the director of the Brink Small Business Development Center. Rachel, thanks for joining us.
Wonderful to be here.
Let's just kind of dive in a little bit more about your background, who you are, and also how you got involved with the Brink. And if you could share what the Brink is too.
Sure. So I tend to sort of characterize my career in three kinds of business. I started out in micro business, so small businesses that would often need some initial financing. And then I moved on to social business, a kind of newer trend towards businesses that are trying to accomplish some sort of social or environmental goal. And then now in small business. So the Brink is a small business development center. That's a nationwide system funded by, at the federal level, the Small Business Administration. And they always look for a local host. So in this case, University of San Diego. So essentially with taxpayer dollars, we're able to provide free support to small business owners and entrepreneurs just getting started. And that can be from all areas of business, from marketing to their first key hires, to business modeling, to key, strategic relationships that they might have in the community.
Now, I know this is a very particular small business development center, right? Because they all specialize in different things. What do you specialize in here?
That's right. SBDCs can have different focus. In our case, we're a tech center, so all of our companies are either science or tech related.
And you guys provide pretty much all kinds of help that any person thinking to start their own business may need, correct? Can you give us some examples of the sort of things that you are able to assist with?
Sure. And I'll start with by who, like who this assistance is coming from. So the folks that are working directly with these businesses are folks that have started their businesses and launched them and often exited. That could mean they went public. That can mean that they sold their company. That can mean that they've raised some significant private financing, like venture capital or angel investment. So these are folks that know
what they're
talking about, but they also know the struggles, and so they can really meet those entrepreneurs where they are. So the kinds of things can be, what we call product market fit. So ideas can be great, but if there's not a market for it, the business is not going to last very long, or maybe never get off the ground. So we'll start with things like that, just making sure there's a demand for your product and that's really satisfying a deep customer problem or customer need. And then we'll help with like marketing strategy. Things have changed a lot with digital marketing strategies, and things change all the time. It's always evolving. So really keeping on top of the trends and finding what are the right marketing channels for the business. So those are some examples. And maybe a final one would be on the financing. All companies, especially startups, need capital to grow. So we help folks access government contracts and grants. So that can be, maybe they can get a grant with their local county, or maybe they could get something with the military, as well as research grants to really help emerging technologies get to market. And then we'll make introductions and help them figure out how to find their investor pipeline. So if they're going to raise angel investment at the early stage and maybe eventually raise some venture capital and some more institutional capital, what's that timeline? What are the things they need to do along the way to be ready for each stage of raising that kind of money?
By working with so many small businesses or people that are aspiring to have a small business, what are some of the common themes you see of people that come to the Brink? Is it they're at the very beginning stages and they need the help, or what sort of can people take away from it that are maybe thinking about starting a business or are starting that process? What are some of the things that people come to you for that maybe they can do their homework in beforehand to kind of get themselves started?
Sure. It's way easier to help somebody if they have identified their customer. So ideally a customer segment. Who is going to buy their products? Who's going to be the first people that are going to buy this? Maybe expands over time. And then what's their pain point? What are the customers currently doing because this product or service doesn't exist yet? That's kind of their main competition, right? So if they've already identified that and asked themselves those questions, they've already de-risked their idea a lot, meaning that we're going to be able to put a strategy around it with them instead of having to do so much validation. So I'd say that's the number one homework. We help a lot of people through it. If they come with already having that, and they've already put some of their, what they usually call owner investment, or sometimes called bootstrapping, to put their own money into the business, that shows both seriousness and often can get them through those first early stages.
And just even with the name alone, the Brink, that kind of tells you what you guys are looking for, right? They're at the edge of something, right? What
That's
went
exactly right.
into the name?
Yeah, so the name is really you're on the brink of something. So maybe they're on the brink or on the edge or on the border of kind of falling over into some level of success. At the edge of it all, as maybe a great podcast is called. And so this could be on the edge of hiring their first employee that besides the founding team. This could be at the edge of raising their first investment. We often, and this is so cool because we get to celebrate this with folks, we help them raise often their first $50,000 or their first $200,000, then maybe their first $1 million. And so a lot of these companies need a lot of money to get started. So those early milestones are so critical. So they're at the brink of that. Maybe they're at the brink of their first contract. And so we're almost always there getting to celebrate one of those first wins with them.
How would people know to come to the Small Business Development Center or the Brink? What would be sort of the criteria? Maybe you're thinking, you're dreaming of starting your own business, but is that the phase where you should come to the Brink, or where would you say people should be on their journey? I know we kind of talked about that a little bit, but if I'm thinking about it, should I just reach out and see if it's a good fit, or where should the stage be in the business journey?
Sure. I think there's two parts to that answer. The first one is you should absolutely reach out even when you're in idea stage, and SBDCs can help. Almost every place in the United States almost every city has a startup week. Those are great places to get started and start meeting people and figure out what are the resources in your local community. The Brink, we like to see when folks already have a founding team, so generally more than one person, like 2 people, and we like to see when they already have some validation for their idea. That doesn't mean they have to have sales, for example, but that means that maybe they've started an Instagram account and they've got a certain number of followers. There's some level of validation that there's demand for what they're doing. That's a great stage to engage with us. But even before that, if you've got an idea, there's so many validation-based resources out there. I wouldn't wait and try to do that stuff on your own. I would say almost all of that stuff's free, and people are kind of dying to help you.
Great.
So, I'm a type of person that pretty much learns by example a lot of times. So can you give us some examples of some of the success stories that the Brink has had?
Sure. So, Hydrostasis is a company I like to think about because it's a cool statistic. She has successfully been awarded a patent, which makes her part of the 4% of patents in the last 10 years that have gone to female inventors.
Wow.
And so I think that that's a really cool example because she was realizing that there's a need for basically a hydration monitoring system because she's an athlete, a Muay Thai fighter, and was going around and was able to get some initial traction and even some initial funding from other folks in her gym. So 2 pieces there that are kind of interesting. And I think can be generalized to other people. One is that there was a problem that was very immediate to her. As an athlete, she saw there was this need for it. And she realized there were other folks in her immediate community that she could tap on for feedback as she was developing it. And the other piece is it's hard to, when you're talking about getting a patent or you're talking about developing your pitch deck for investors the first time, if you're not a serial entrepreneur, if you haven't been through it before or haven't seen it modeled by a parent or a friend, it can be super intimidating. So I think one of the things that we do is can reduce some of those barriers the first time somebody does that and walk them through it.
Right. And I know that I have talked to many people that have come through the Brink, and what gets me all the time is how impressed they are with the fact that a lot of this, if not everything, was free of charge. Like they couldn't believe that they were getting walked through that patent process where sometimes they have to hire attorneys or very costly. I mean, do you see that?
Absolutely. And I think there's 2 pieces to that as well. One is that I always say, thank you for your tax dollars because that's what pays for
right.
this. So I want people to use this because this is a benefit of being, a citizen here. And the other piece of it is that we know that along the entrepreneur journey, they don't have those funds up front. So later on, they might have funds to, and will need to, retain an attorney as their legal counsel.
Right.
But at the beginning, those critical moments, at the first part of their journey where they do need to protect intellectual property, for example, we try to figure out what partnerships or introductions can we make to give folks either at low cost or pro bono support.
I know during the pandemic, we kept hearing that all these businesses were being started. We kept hearing that people were leaving their jobs to start maybe that dream business. What were some of the trends you were seeing at the Brink as far as who was starting businesses and what kind of businesses? And maybe that kind of sheds a light on what we might expect in the future for businesses.
Yeah, I think there's a wave coming. We're already starting to see it. So during the pandemic, we've talked about a lot in the workforce too, a great evaluation, a reevaluation of how people want to spend their time in their career. So some of that, in addition to needing additional income, women were adversely impacted at greater rates by layoffs, especially at the beginning of the pandemic. So we saw lots of people starting additional sort of supplementary businesses, sometimes called side businesses. And then, trends changed where industries changed. Like education at home opened up a whole opportunity for virtual education. So we've seen a lot of educational apps and things that would allow for distance learning come into the market. We've certainly had lots of federal investment in drug development, some of it related to COVID. So we've seen San Diego become a place where biotech is booming, right? So there's been some opening of industries. And in terms of the who's starting the business, we're starting to see the new growth in businesses, and this reflects in who's signing up for SBDC services at the Brink as well, would be women and folks of color, and also that there's a greater variety of age. So, in terms of, you don't have to be, that 20-year-old startup right out of college, tech entrepreneur. We're seeing a greater spread in terms of the age.
Why was it important for the Brink to be connected to a university campus? And by the way, you don't have to be part of this university in any way, shape, or form to get help from the Brink. But what do you see as a benefit?
Sure. So one of the reasons that we're here is to be able to tap into all the resources of the university. So that can be, in some cases, we can partner with classes. So we've partnered with classes that have done market research reports with entrepreneurs. And so that's kind of a win-win. Students get experience in that, and entrepreneurs get somebody external to their organization to give some industry insights and bring some of the robust research things that they're learning in the classroom. Also, faculty who are thought leaders get to tie them. So often, we've got some supply chain professors that we're tapping regularly to meet with some of our.
Oh, they're very busy.
They're
right
very
now.
busy. It's kind of the question of the time, and so tap them with some of our companies that are doing like artificial intelligence for supply chain decisions and data analytics kind of software plays. So. All that to say, those are two examples of the student and the faculty resources that are sort of here to bear, and then also just physical space and programming, right? So, for example, we've got a great partnership with our legal clinics here, so law students will be able to take on some of our companies as clients and help them maybe form their LLC, and at the same time, law students here get experience in working with, corporate needs.
Yeah, a lot going on. What would be your advice for somebody that is looking to start a business? What would be your advice? Maybe it's something that you hear a lot, that people are thankful that they have the Brink to help with that. What is some advice you think would be important for somebody?
Or even what are some of the things that they come to you most often?
Yeah, what's the one resource that it's always the number one thing people are looking at?
I'd say everybody comes to us saying, I need money. Introduce me to lenders, introduce me to investors. For the most part, it's 100% part of their journey. I'd say that a pre-step usually that they end up realizing is really, really critical is customer centricity, understanding who's your customer, what their needs are. And so I always say, some people are saying like, oh, well, I don't have an idea. So when I have an idea, I'll loop back. And it's like, well, actually a problem to solve is probably a better place to start than your own solution, because often we get so fixated on the ideas and what are all the features going to be and what's it going to look like and the color, et cetera, for example. And really what's going to make or break it is whether or not it's satisfying a really important need in the market. So problem over solution, and customer needs over features. And of course, there's lots of different paths to financing a startup. So I'd say the main thing we help people with is navigating what path is right for them. Bank financing versus raising investment versus bootstrapping versus government grants, and almost always a combination of all of the above.
Mm-hmm. Rachel, are there workshops that people can sign up for?
Sure. We run a couple workshops quarterly, and we also have weekly office hours. And so office hours are often a great way to just jump in. They're Tuesdays at 6 o'clock, and people can just jump in with their questions about their business. And then from there, usually people will say like, oh, I really want to take this marketing workshop, or this one that's about the lean startup customer discovery process, or this one that's about, pursuing research and development grants from the government. So those are some ones that we run quarterly, but there's like a couple different on-ramps that we try to make it easy for people to just come and see. And then from there.
What about on the flip side? Do you have enough mentors? Are you always happy to have more? How can they get a hold of you if they have been through the system, so to speak, and can have something to help out with?
Sure. So we've got a rockstar team of, exited and current entrepreneurs that are the ones helping the businesses that I mentioned. So I'm, always happy to meet people that want to come in. Those are consulting roles. So they do get paid, and then there's some mentoring roles, and we always are affiliated with other, pitch competitions, et cetera, that constantly need judges and evaluators and mentors. So there's always an opportunity to get involved. And so, here at University of San Diego's Free Enterprise Institute, there's an on-ramp on our website to just get involved and figure out what's the right path.
Is there like a criteria? Like if you fulfill these, you can come and help out?
Yeah, so I'd say, at least having a couple years in business, and then then I'd say it's like, what's the specialty? So if somebody can come in and they can bring in some financial analysis abilities where somebody else might have a lot of experience in data analytics and another person maybe in marketing. So I'd say it'd be, your years of experience, running a business, and then what's kind of the special subset of skills that you might bring.
It must be so exciting to just get to walk small businesses on this journey and then to see them grow. It must be just a really exciting job for yourself to witness it all.
It must be emotional too.
Sure, yeah. I mean, sometimes, certainly tears come when, either somebody gets passed on for a funding opportunity or a contract, or when they get it, right? So you're kind of going on that journey with them. But, I think that some days I get to be matchmaker, some days I get to be fairy godmother, connecting people with resources. And then some days you just get to be in somebody's corner and saying like, yeah, the life of an entrepreneur is hard. And so we're going to just keep knocking on the doors.
Keep being the cheerleader. Yeah.
Rachel, why are you so passionate about this? I run into you all the time on campus. I've talked to you several times. I've worked with you in many projects, and you just are really passionate. Why? What led you to this point in your life?
Yeah, everybody's got to have a why, right? So I think that the piece that brings me to just entrepreneurship, but also just, I call it, we call it change making here, right? But just making something that wasn't and then is. Like, I like to activate things. And so I think being in the presence of entrepreneurs all the time, you don't get stuck in the conversations of we can't. We get really motivated by the conversations of how can we? And so I think that that's a motivator. It's just like, what can we do to change things? And I'm really motivated by equity and changing, and righting imbalances of power. And I think entrepreneurship is a real way to do that, and do that where there's a real bottom line for neighborhoods, including where I work and where I live.
And Elena, I think you and I have seen many of these projects and small businesses and the people that you guys help. At the end of the day, these are businesses that are solving a problem, but for the overall good of their communities, which is such a very important part of this work as well. They're doing something good with that business for others a lot of times.
Absolutely. And I mean, we're going to see more and more of that. But I'd say for the most part, we're working with companies that are increasing the grid, working on electrical vehicle charging stations being more accessible in different neighborhoods, to people that are increasing, antibody therapeutics. So for cancer, for example, or, other diseases that are under researched. And so it's like, we've got those social impact, and then we've got ones that are also working on how can we employ, as we grow as a business, how can we employ people that have barriers to employment, maybe people that were formerly involved in the justice system or new Americans, et cetera. So there's so many different ways to make social impact through a business. And so I definitely see an increasing number of businesses often will either use the Sustainable Development Goals from the UN as kind of a benchmark, or this term of ESG, so environmental, governmental or social, as a way to sort of say, hey, they're not just looking to maximize profit, they're also looking to solve some kind of social environmental need.
Well, thank you so much for talking with us. This was a wealth of information, and I think a great resource for anybody looking to start their next small business.
Absolutely.
So thank you for joining us, and thank you for listening to At the Edge of It All. If you're interested in listening to any more of our episodes, be sure to subscribe.